So this is solving quadratic equations by the method of completing squares. The general formula or the general form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Then it can also be ax squared plus or minus sum of x plus the product, giving us 0, where a, b, and c are numerical values and a should not be equal to 0. And therefore, when you have your general formula as a x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. This is just from our general formula. So now, when we are to identify it very well, we shall find out that b is the sum. So from the quadratic equation, b is the sum, and then the product in our quadratic equation is equal to c. So now when you're solving this quadratic equation using the method of completing squares, then you will have to use our formula, which is a x squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So now when we look at this one here, we shall find out that the sum in our equation is b and then the product is c. So if the product is c, then a is the coefficient of x squared. So for us to solve this quadratic equation using the method of completing squares, we have to first of all make sure that the coefficient or x squared has no coefficient which is more than 1. So the coefficient is supposed to be 1. So which means for us to make the coefficient of x squared to be 1, we have to divide all through by a. So where we shall have a divided by a, then giving us again this one will be b divided by a, then we shall also have c divided by a, and then we shall also have 0 divided by a. Then when we divide this one, this a by a will give us only x squared. Then plus, this one cannot be divided, we shall be having a, it is b out of a, x, then plus c all over a is equal to, now 0 divided by any number or letter, we shall get 0. So this is the outcome of dividing the whole equation by the coefficient of x squared. But now if the coefficient of x squared is 1, don't disturb your equation by dividing again by the coefficient of x squared. So if the coefficient of x squared is 1, you leave it the way it is, then you just start solving. Now from our equation, the new sum is b out of a, then the new product is c out of a. So now when we are solving this kind of equation, then we have to first of all split up our sum. So the sum is b out of a. So we have to divide b out of a by 2. So we have to get the half of b out of a. So when we are to get a half of b out of a, we shall have our equation a, it is x squared, plus this one we shall have b out of a divided by 2. So this one will be x. So for us to get this very equation here, we have to add the half of the sum. So if we are to add the half of the sum, we shall have b x all over 2a plus, still half of our sum is b x out of 2a, which means we shall still have b x out of 2a, then plus c, giving us a is equal to 0. So now when we are to add this one and this, we shall find out that the final sum will give us b out of a. So now this one does not change the equation, so even if you are to add, you will still go back there. So now after reaching this kind of step, this step here, you have to get a half of the sum. Then after getting the half of the sum, you have to add the two halves together. Then when you add, still you will go back to the general equation, this one here. So now after getting that, we shall continue by crossing the product, our product here, to this side of the equation. So when we are crossing, just take a out of c to the right hand side of the equation. So we shall have x squared plus bx all over 2a plus bx all over 2a. Then we are crossing this one. This one is an equal sign, it is a plus. When a plus is crossing equal sign, it changes to a negative. So which means we shall have 0 minus c out of a. So when we are to simplify the right hand side, we shall still have x squared plus bx all over 2a all over 2a, then plus bx all over 2a, giving us now 0 minus c out of a. We shall remain with negative c out of a. So this one is still the rearrangement of our equation. So now after rearranging the equation like that, we shall have to deal with the half of the sum which we have got. So now a half of the sum which we have got, we have to replace it. Now after getting half of the sum, we know that half of our sum is that half of the sum is bx out of 2a, so which is giving us x squared plus bx all over 2a plus bx all over 2a, giving us c, negative c out of a. So now after getting that one, we said that you look at the half of the sum. Now half of the sum is b out of 2a. So the b out of 2a, we are supposed to add on the left hand side of the equation, and then we should also add to the right hand side of the equation. But when we are adding, we need to add the square of the half of the sum. So now the square of half of the sum will be b out of 2a, the whole thing square. So which means we have to add on the left hand side of the equation, and then we have to add also on the right hand side of the equation. So this is the left hand side of the equation, then this one is the right hand side of the equation. So when we are to add, we shall have our equation becoming x squared plus bx all over 2a, then plus bx all over 2a, then plus a half of the sum is b out of 2a, but we are adding square of it, which is that should give us negative c all over a, then plus also b out of 2a square. So after adding the square on both sides of the equation, then we shall now simplify. Let us simplify further. We shall have a, it is x squared plus bx all over 2a, then plus bx all over 2a, then plus, now the square of this one will give us b squared. Remember the square is on both b and 2 out of a, so which means when you are to square, we shall have b squared all over 2. This 2 here square will give us 4, and then a square will also give us a square, which is equal to negative c all over a, then plus the square of this one, we shall have b square all over the square of 2 will be 4, then the square of a will be a square. Then after finishing simplifying or solving like that, we simplify further. So when we are simplifying further, we shall have x square, then plus, we have to group them into two, so we group this one differently. So we shall have a x square plus bx all over 2a. We group, put in bracket, then plus, also this one you put in bracket, this 2 will be bx all over 2a, then plus b square all over 4a square. We close. Should give us, now when we are to simplify this one, these are two fractions being added. So when we are to add them, we shall get our LCM. So the LCM here is what? The LCM is 4a square. So 4a square divided by a, we shall have 4a. Then the 4a times c, we shall have negative 4ac plus 4a square divided by 4a square, we shall have 1. Then that 1 times b square, we shall have b square. So the b squared, this side is the simplification of the upper equation. So we have simplified the upper equation because we are adding the two fractions. When you are adding the two fractions, you have to get the LCMs. So after getting the LCM of this one, then you find out how to simplify using the LCM. Then after grouping this left-hand side equation, what you have to do, the next step is to pull out the common factor. Now when you look at the first equation, the first bracket here, this is the second bracket. So pull out the common factor from the first bracket. So when you have to pull out the common factor from the first bracket, we shall have x is the common factor here. So when you pull out x, which means you'll have x outside the bracket, giving us, it will give us x plus b all over 2a. Then you close. Move to the second bracket. The second bracket also has its common factor. Now we want to look at the common factor in this one. X is not the common factor, but the common factor will be b out of 2a. So pull out b out of 2a. So it will be plus, it is this very plus, pull out b out of 2a. So when you pull out this one, you will have only x. Then plus, in this one, you will have b all over 2a. So this is the common factor in the second bracket, and then this one is the common factor in the first bracket. Then you maintain the right hand side equation. So the right hand side equation will still be negative 4ac plus b squared. The whole thing divided by 4a squared. So we are dividing by 4a squared. So this equation here, the equation is just after pulling out the common factor from the left hand side. Then after that, you group those common factors which are outside the bracket together by maintaining the plus sign, or the sign which is in between the two brackets. So which means we shall have x. Then this one is carrying a plus. You bring also the plus here. You'll have plus b out of 2a. You close. Then times one of these, because when you look at them, they are all the same. So you have to multiply one of the bracket with what you have put there with the common factors which you have grouped. So which means you will have x plus b all over 2a. You close. Then the whole thing will give us negative 4ac plus b squared, giving us also, we divide by 4a squared. So when we are to divide that, when you look at this one here, this equation here, the left hand side have the same common members in each of the brackets. So which means when you have to multiply the two brackets which are the same, then we shall have these brackets are all the same. So which means if the members are the same, then we shall only square. So which means when you have to multiply the two similar things, you'll have x plus b all over 2a, the whole thing. Because they are the same, we square just. Then you'll have this one being equated to that. You'll have minus 4ac plus b squared. The whole thing divided by 4a squared. Then after, because when you have to look at this one, we have the square root, or we have the square. So which means we have to remove away the square from the left hand side by getting the square root on both sides. So you have to get the square root both sides of the equation. When you get the square root, this one will have to move with this. Then what you will remain with will be x plus b all over 2a, then giving us the square root there. We shall have root. You can now put this one in BODMAS. So BODMAS, when we have addition and then subtraction, addition comes first. So which means subtraction have to be last, and therefore we shall have our equation being b square minus 4ac, the whole thing divided by 4a squared. Then now we have to collect the like terms. Oh, we first of all simplify this one here. So when we are to simplify, we shall have x plus b all over 2a is equal to, so when we look at this one, this equation here, the downer one is having a root. So if the root is on this, the square root of 4 is 2, then the square root of a square is a. So which means our equation, the square root will only remain up. So when it has to remain up, we shall have our final equation being b squared minus 4ac. Then the whole thing is supposed to be divided by the square root of 4 is 2. This one is 2. Then for a square is a. So that is our equation, but this is not yet our final equation. We have to get the value of x. But if you are to get the square root, then this one will have to be plus or minus. This side also plus or minus. Here also should be plus or minus. Then now to get only the value of x, take this b out of a square to this side of the equation. So if we are to take, we shall have x alone will be equal to root, that is plus or minus. It will be root of, it is plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac. The whole thing is supposed to be divided by 2a. But because we are crossing the equal sign, we shall have minus b all over 2a. So when we are to arrange, we shall have our equation as x is equal to minus b all over 2a plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing divided by 2a. So this one we can make sure that we have only one LCM. So which means when we are to have only one LCM, here we have the same LCM. So which means we shall have x is equal to the LCM of 2a remains 2a. So which means we shall have 2a. Then 2a divided by 2a, we shall have 1. Then 1 times negative b, we shall have negative b. Then plus or minus 2a divided by 2a, we shall have 1, then times the whole of the numerator, we shall have root of b squared minus 4ac. So this one gives us the final conclusion. This is the final conclusion. When we are solving the quadratic equation using the method of completing squared, we can have that kind of methods there. So out of that one, we shall have an example on how to solve the quadratic equation using the method of completing squares. So let us have one example. Shall have one example here. So this method is called the Boole-D method. That is the Boole-Dodger method. It is the Boole-Dodger method. So you can derive the Boole-Dodger method using that method. That is the method of completing squared. So when they ask you to derive the Boole-Dodger method, that is how you will derive using the method of completing squared. There is no any other method which can be used to derive that, but you derive using the method of completing squared. So let us look at one example on how we can solve the simultaneous equation using the method of completing squared. So we have our equation x squared. We have x squared so the equation is x squared our example is x squared minus, or can have a plus, 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. So when we are to solve this one using the method of completing squared, try to navigate, you move around the equations and look at the coefficients of the unknown which we have. Now when we look at x squared, the coefficient of x squared is 1. Then the coefficient of x is 3. Then we have 10 as our product being equated to 0. So now we said that when you have the coefficient of x squared which is more than 1, so you have to divide all the equation by the coefficient of x squared. But because this one we have 1, there is no need of dividing all through by 1, because even if you divide all through by 1, you will remain by that very equation. So don't waste time dividing by the coefficient of x squared if it is 1. So let us identify our sum, and then we also identify the product. So from the equation, our sum is equal to 3, and then the product, our product is equal to negative 10. So that is those are the sum and then the product. So we have the sum 3, product is equal to negative 10. Now we said when you are solving the quadratic equation using the method of completing square, our quadratic equation is x squared plus 3x all over, it is 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. So the first step is to find out the half of the sum. Our sum is x, the sum is 3. So if the sum is 3, divide 3 by 2, that is the half of the sum. Then after dividing by 2, you add the two sums. So which means we shall have x squared plus, get the half of the sum, that is by dividing by 2. So which means when we are to get the half of the sum, we shall have 3 divided by 2 x. Again, after getting the half of the sum, add that very half of the sum to what you have written here. So you had plus 3 out of 2x. Should this one, it give us minus 10 is equal to 0. Now when you add the two halves together, you will go back to 3x. So there is no any different thing from here. So when you reach this step, the only thing which you have to do is to get half of the sum, then you add the two half of the sum together. Then after that, take 10 to the left hand side of the equation. We move this 10 to this side here. So when you move it, we shall have x squared plus 3 out of 2x, then plus 3 out of 2x. Take 10 to the right hand side of the equation, which means we shall have give equal to 0. This is a minus. Crossing equal sign, it changes to a plus, so it will be plus 10. Then after that, we shall simplify and have x squared plus 3 out of 2x plus 3 out of 2x, giving us 0 plus 10, we shall remain with 10. Then after that, we have to add half or the square of half of the sum to both sides of the equation. So which means we shall add on the left hand side of the equation, and also we shall add on the right hand side of the equation. What we are going to add is the half, the square of half of the sum only. So which means when we are to add, we shall have x squared plus 3 out of 2x plus 3 out of 2x, then plus the square of half of the sum. So how half of the sum is 3 out of 2. So you have to square it. We are adding the square of half of the sum on both sides of the equation. So which means this is the left hand side we have already had it, should give us 10 plus a half, or the square of half of the sum, which is 3 out of 2 squared. So after adding, we shall now remain with our equation as x squared plus 3 out of 2x plus 3 out of 2x, then plus 3 squared is 9, all over 2 squared is 4, giving us this one will be 10 plus 9 out of 4. So that is it is not yet the final conclusion, but it is what you will get after adding the square of half of the sum on both sides of the equation, that is on the left hand side and also on the right hand side of the equation. So which means after adding, we shall group them, group those figures 2 on the left hand side of the equation. So we shall have x squared plus 3 out of 2x. So we are grouping them. We shall have this one being put in bracket, then plus into, this one is also a positive, it will remain as positive 3x all over 2, then plus 9 out of 4. You close, should be equal to. So when we look at our equation, this one is the same as 10 out of 1. We have two fractions. When the two fractions are being added, you have to get the LCM. So now for us to add the two fractions, we shall get the LCM of 1 and 4. So the LCM of 1 and 4 is 4. Now 4 divided by 1, we shall have 4. Then 4 times 10, we shall have 40. Then plus 4 divided by 4, we shall have 1. Then 1 times 9, we shall have 1. So after that, our equation will finally be x squared plus 3 out of 2x, you close the bracket, then plus into, we shall have 3 out of 3x out of 2 plus 9 out of 2, then should give us 40 plus 1 is 41 all over 4, all over 4. Then after that we have to pull out the common factor from each of the brackets. So in this first bracket you pull out the common factor. So our common factor is x, so you pull out x, you will have x into, pulling out x from here we shall remain with x, then plus, pulling out x from here we shall remain with 3 out of 2, you close. Then you also pull out from here, we shall have plus, pull out the common factor. Now our common factor is 3, this is supposed to be 9 out of 4. So our common factor will be 3 out of 2. Then when you pull out the common factor from this one, you'll remain with x, then plus, this one will remain 3 out of 2, then should give us 41 all over 9. So this is our results after factorizing or after pulling out the common factor. So when you pull out the common factor from here, try to group those common factors together plus the sign which is before them. So which means in this one we shall have positive, that is going to be x, then here this one we shall have plus 3 out of 2. So you bring also it here, 3 out of 2, you close in bracket, then times one of the two brackets, because these two brackets have the